Welcome back to another episode of The Pursuit of Myself. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a very, very big week. It's been one of those weeks where I thought, holy shit, if I did not have a strong foundation of basic nervous system tools, I probably would have collapsed. And it had me thinking about all the times and the anxieties and the capacity and my divorce and kids doing their thing and relationships and starting businesses and, not getting the result in business and starting another business, all the times that we have lived life. This is like, yes, when life is lifing. But as I moved through this last week, I'm thinking, wow, I wonder what was my capacity back then? What was my capacity to hold what I was calling in? What was my capacity of my nervous system to not collapse? And this doesn't actually mean not feeling your feelings. This means your ability to actually feel your feelings, feel the anxiety, feel the fear, feel the frustration, rise, meet it, and then move through it. Not shove it down, not pretend it's not there, but actually move through it. So I do want to commend myself on a lot of stuff that I've had going on at home with the kids and a lot of shifts and changes. But it is now that I know so deeply in my heart that we do need strong foundations for us to be able to move through life. And I do speak to so many women, and a lot of them say, Rain, I can't wait to work with you, but I'm waiting for the court date. Rain, I really want to work with you, but I'm waiting for the divorce to come through, or I really want to work with you, but, all these sorts of things. And usually we're making those decisions when we're at capacity and our nervous system is in overflow already and we are in survival and fight or flight. And it is hard to make decisions for yourself. But what I want to invite you, if you're listening to this and thinking, ugh, that's me right now, is it's like, when do you actually need the support? Do you need the support when things are going great? Or do you need the support when you're learning how to cope and manage in situations that are completely overwhelming, when you're burnt out, when you feel like you've got nowhere to turn and no tools in your tool belt to actually get you through the day? And I want to challenge you to think about that, because when we can find our way out of adversity, when we are in the situation, is the way that we expand our nervous system. When we find our way forward, when we're in peace and when we're just cruising on with life, that is not expansion. I don't even know what you would call it. It's not a negative move, but it just is. It's not something that you face a fear with and then move through it. It's just something that happens. So look, either way, I know that this work, the personal development work, the nervous system work, the expansion work, the growing a business work, all these sorts of things are absolutely forefront to our building the life that you want. But I do want to challenge you and say, if you're listening to this and you're like, ugh, I feel like I'm at the depths, you're not going to be able to logically make a decision to change and start work because your nervous system is like scary, scary, scary. I know that this dysregulation and this survival mode that I'm in, I'm like got everything together and I'm coping just. And I'd rather stay here coping just than learn a new skill to be able to work through my anxieties and work through my fears. If you can find the courage to step out of your zone and into growth, no matter what situation you're in, without making the reasons or the logical excuses, that is when everything expands so quickly, so quickly. It's like being afraid of public speaking, but deciding that you're going to combat that public speaking by booking a live event. And just booking the live event. And the fear is, one, no one's going to come. I'm going to not be able to speak on stage. I'm scared to speak on stage. But that is actually how you grow and move through things. It is when you really take a deep breath, find the courage and go, you know what, no matter what, I know that that is for me. That growth is for me. That business is for me. That expansion is for me. And no matter where I'm at in my life, I'm going to choose my higher self. I'm going to choose my identity that I know I already need to be now so that I can move through things quickly. That is the way that you collapse time. That is the way that by the end of that court date, by the end of that decision, you've already done all the nervous system expansion capacity so that when you get to the end of that road, that you're settled no matter what the outcome. And you haven't limped over the finish line in tatters. You've actually got there and you're like, I'm semi put together and I'm ready to even expand this further. So that was just my invitation for you today. Before we get into this episode, I want to speak to this episode is interesting. This is about tolerance and standards. Because again, even with what I just said, what is happening at the moment is that we are wanting more, but we're tolerating shit. You are wanting that business, but you are not coming on and being visible online. You are wanting that relationship, but you're accepting bullshit standards and thinking that that's all that's out there. So this episode is for the woman that is totally capable, because I see you, I know you, right? And that you are ready to actually step into that next level, but can't feel or know what that is looking like for you just yet, because you are being tricked into staying stuck. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Pursuit of Myself, the podcast. Here we take ownership of our healing. We rewrite the rules, we turn knowledge into wisdom, and we lead our lives with intention. I'm your host, Rain, and it's my mission to empower you to get back into the driver's seat of your life. Your results are not created by what you want. They are created by what you tolerate. And there comes a moment in every woman's life where the version of her that got her to here, to this point that you're experiencing now, that version is no longer the version that can take you to where you want to go. She can't take you into the business that you want to grow. She can't deepen that love connection. And she cannot take you into the freedom that you deeply, deeply desire. So if you can feel that edge for yourself, that quiet dissatisfaction, that sense of there's more, but I don't know what needs to change, this episode is that conversation. Because the life that you want, it is not blocked. It's waiting for you to upgrade the identity that you're living from today. Now, I know this work deeply because over the past, however many years since I've been born, really, we create all these different iterations of ourselves, all these different versions of ourselves when we want something, when we need to grow, when we're in a relationship, when we separate, when we're building businesses, when we're at school, when we're at teens. We create all these different ways that we survive, that we can grow, and all the different versions of identity that come actually do become part of us. They just kind of layer on these different things. And we know that these things teach us how to belong, and they do get us to a certain point. But now, if that version of me is like, okay, I want to, as I said last week, double my business again. That version of me wants to go on another big family holiday. That version of me wants something else. It's like, how can today, the Rain that's showing up today, actually create that? There is something that needs to internally shift in me so that I can create that next level version. And I really want to bang this home, because one thing that so many women say to me is that they feel stuck. They are so capable. They show up. They're doing the work. They're making the impact. You know, they're running the families. They're being wives. This isn't talking to people that are quote unquote lazy or lack motivation. This is not talking to the woman who is missing strategy. You know, strategy, as we know, is very important, but strategy actually comes second to the identity energetics, because your current identity needs to be upgraded. You could run off any strategy that you want, but if you don't actually feel connected to it or safe to hold it, to hold what you desire, then you're not actually going to create the impact that you desire, because the life that you want is not blocked. It's just waiting for you to become available for it. It is waiting for you to become available to more clients, waiting for you to become available to that freedom-based business, waiting for you to become available to deepening that love and connection. Because you can want freedom, money, love, ease, but desire alone doesn't actually create the results. Now, there is one thing that we say and that is, follow your desire, not the thing that's stopping you, not your fear. Follow your desire, not your incapability. Follow your desire. That is what your compass is the desire. But we don't rise to the level of what our desire is. We only rise to the level of what we believe and think we can have and hold whilst being safe. So the result is actually responding to who you're being, not your desire. And this is a real core thing that we teach in the academy, because And it's also another reason why I've created this mastermind, because when we get women together, when we get women in a group, we can show up not only with the desire, but we get to practice being who we need to be so that the results follow. Very, very, very important, because you do not rise to the level of those desires and goals. You rise to the standard that you set for yourself. And the standards, your standards that you're accepting, are coming from identity. The standards that you are accepting are coming from what you believe you're worth, what you believe you can hold. So have a look at your romantic relationships. What do you believe you deserve? Have a look at in the clients you're attracting in your business. What do you believe you deserve? Have a look at the money that you're attracting. Do you actually believe that you can hold space for more money? That you're good, you have a good relationship with your money, that when that money comes in, you know what to do with it. You know how to spend it, know how to circulate it, know how to use it energetically. If we are scared to have money and then we drain our bank accounts because the random bills come in, because things happen that have been out of our control, or it might be that you go and shop because your nervous system feels safer to not have the responsibility of holding that into your bank account, right? And these are the standards that we set for ourselves. These are the standards that, until we get radically honest about what we are accepting and tolerating in our life, we will continue to create the same merry-go-round, whether it's with love, money, business, clients, over and over and over again. Because you don't get the business, the money, or the relationship that you want. You get what the version of you're living as can hold. So this is where we have to check our standards. Now, a lot of the stuff that I talk about is about taking radical self-responsibility. Radical self-responsibility is a direct reflection of how honest you can also be with yourself. We find it hard to not put our head in the sand. We also find it hard to find our own roadblocks and to find our own blind spots. Because, me as a mentor and coach, I do find that hard. I do find it hard when I'm going, oh gosh, why is this pattern happening over and over again? Why am I attracting the same type of client? What is going on here? How am I showing up? And one of my things that I've been showing up as is too relatable. I'm trying to speak to everyone. And why am I being too relatable? Because I want to be safe. I don't want people to feel left out. I want everyone to have access, right? So this is my identity, is being safe. And it's hiding behind the way that I'm showing up, which means what? What happens when we are showing up safety? We're not expanding. So we have to understand that the life that we're looking at and the life that we're leading is a complete mirror for what is going on inside of us, what we are tolerating. So what we are tolerating is really, really interesting, because we can look back through our lives. And I had a client who is coming out of a very narcissistic, abusive marriage. And she was treated like absolute garbage, gaslit, cheated on, no communication for days, silent treatment. What else? A financial withdrawal. What do you call that? That's financial abuse, like emotional abuse, all the things. Probably the only thing she didn't suffer was the physical abuse. Now, when you suffer and this for so long, what do you begin tolerating? You begin tolerating really, really bad behavior. As long as he's not X, then I'm going to be okay, right? As long as I do X, then I can put up with this. Because I have children, then I can put up with this for a bit longer. And what happens is you build this tolerance to a life that not is different to everyone else's, but your tolerance to that situation is different to what, say, someone in a mutually respectful, loving marriage is. A mutually respectful, loving marriage, someone might have a tolerance bandwidth of being like, you said you'd be home at 10, but you got home at 12. Not acceptable. That's someone else's tolerance bandwidth. So every person is unique in their own blueprint of what they will and will not tolerate. So your nervous system has normalized certain behaviors, certain ways of living, certain things. And what you've learned to live with without changing is the reality that you choose. So if someone else then comes along and treats you half shit, your nervous system might be like, oh, this is actually quite good. I'm okay here. Like, this isn't as bad as it was last time. So I'm going to tolerate it, because your tolerance bandwidth is so large when it comes to that area of your life. And make no mistake, our tolerance bandwidth will leak into all areas. So this might be, Your pain tolerance. A lot of people have a different form of pain tolerance. Could be the pain in a relationship, could be the pain tolerance with a business partner, could be the pain tolerance with being, broke or having lack of funds consistently in your business. And your body actually ends up feeling quite safe without that money, without that reflection of things could be better. So your tolerance bandwidth is at a certain point. It might be inconsistent income. So a lot of entrepreneurs have a great tolerant bandwidth to inconsistent income. If you're going and working a 9-to-5 job and once a week or once a fortnight, you get that money in your bank account and that that's safe and you feel relaxed and your nervous system is like, yes. And then you go out to become an entrepreneur and you're like, holy fuck, my nervous system is not calibrated to inconsistent income. My nervous system is not calibrated to not having exact amount in my bank account so that I know I can live and so that I know I can pay my bills. This is actually where a lot of entrepreneurs, they fall over in their early years because their tolerance bandwidth to inconsistent income is just not there. We could be in business over giving and under receiving because our tolerance is like we have to have people like us. We have to be pleasing everyone. So we over give and we tolerate under receiving, right? Our tolerance bandwidth could be being the really strong one. I can tolerate, and this is something that I know for myself, that I tolerate being the strong one. I find it quite easy. I am the strong one for everyone else. But then that also lends me to what is the opposite. So there's a light and shadow of every situation is that I struggle to ask for support. Not anymore. I'm very happy to ask for support now. Actually, you can support me if you'd like to like this podcast episode and share it with some friends. Tolerance, I'm actually serious about that, by the way. I do put a lot of effort into these podcasts. So if you wouldn't mind, that would be great. Asking, see? Ask and ye shall receive. Better yet, how about you take a photo of this and put it on your Instagram and I will reshare it for you. Okay, a little bit off topic. Tolerance bandwidth could be, you could be easily tolerating a lack of communication from your partner, being ghosted. Maybe you have been ghosted in your relationship or not being with a great communicator for a really long time. So your tolerance to not being communicated with is quite large. And we use that to do things like avoid hard conversations. We use that to go, oh, it's okay, they're a bad communicator. We use that. But the question here is with your tolerance and with your standards, what are you tolerating that feels familiar, but is not aligned with what you are wanting? So for my relationship girlies, what are you tolerating in your relationship that is not aligned, but it still feels familiar and you're making excuses? What is that? For my business ladies, what are you tolerating? What standards are you tolerating with your clients, whether it's late payments, whether it's not showing up to a coaching call, whether it's a late cancellation of a coaching call, whether it's whatever it is, what are you tolerating in your business that is not aligned with the identity that you need to be now to grow and evolve? Because this is where things need to shift. You are not stuck. You are just loyal to a version of yourself that you have already outgrown, but you just don't know it yet. That ping that you get when you know that it's not right, when you know that it's not aligned, that little ping, that is your sign. And when we keep ignoring that ping over and over again, our tolerance bandwidth rises and it becomes, or not too much to handle, but it just becomes normal. It becomes familiar. So what are you tolerating? That's the first question. Now, and I know even myself, I can feel these little pings going off at the moment. Ping, ping, ping. I know what I'm tolerate. Yep. Okay. I need to call that out. A lot of the times I'm doing this podcast and when I'm coaching, I'm also coaching and myself. So I'm very open to that. But what actually happens when you start having these pings is we either shrink, become familiar, or we put ourselves in a situation where we face what is going on, face the unsafety of the growth or the feeling of the unsafe of the growth, and we make a move anyway. Because this is where you actually start bringing your nervous system some beautiful wisdom. Because what the nervous system does is it protects the familiar. It doesn't protect your future. It protects what is safe and what you know. It doesn't help you grow into where you're wanting to go. We need to grow the nervous system. We need to give it wisdom. We need to give it a voice. We need to have the nervous system feel like it can do hard things. So when you do things like raise your prices, you will know that your nervous system will be like, ugh. That was one of my clients the other day. It's like, I felt so anxious all over Christmas and I didn't understand why until I raised my prices. And she had been thinking about raising her prices for months, but hadn't done it. And then knew that the time that she'd set for herself was 2026. D-Day was coming and she was feeling so anxious about it. Her nervous system wasn't ready to expand in that way. So we had to expand for it. So it could be raising your prices. It could be being visible consistently on Instagram or whatever your social media choice is, because we have to be visible if we're growing. Your nervous system will feel uncomfortable. It might be for when you stop people pleasing, because that is an identity mask that we put on as well. When you have to ask for support or ask for more love, your body will react. Your body will have resistance. It doesn't actually mean that it's wrong. What it means is that it's showing you where your capacity is, right? And then you get to decide, right, this is my capacity. Am I happy with the non-communicative relationship? Am I happy with people not showing up to my classes? But okay, the answer is no, no, no. But the next question is, are you willing to do something about it? Are you willing to expand your capacity in your nervous system to a point which can actually make some change in your life? Because the discomfort that you're feeling is not danger. It's actually an identity stretch. It's stretching your identity to the next level that is needed for your growth. So the identity that has been keeping things steady, that keeps you liked, that keeps you feeling safe, that keeps you just feel like you're belonging, that identity that you desire, that you're wanting to step into, it needs to hold more authority over what the experience is. It needs to have the ability to receive more. Maybe the identity that you desire, it leads you instead of waits to respond to the happenings around you. Maybe instead of waiting for people and having to have that conversation about not showing up, you decide to then go put things in place in your business so that's very, very clear. You might send out a reminder 24 hours. Hey, cancellation within 24 hours mean you lose that session. And that is one way. The other way is to say, actually physically say it if you really want to push yourself out of your comfort zone. But when we feel that ping, the identity is asking us, well, where do you want to go with it? Are we going to hold more authority? Do we want to receive more? Do we want to lead more? Do we want to be visible more? The ping, the nervous system says maybe no, but the identity says yes. This is what I need to do to be in my power as I'm growing. And this is the gap, right? The gap between who you're being and who you want to be. And this gap that I'm talking about, and I know I've talked about a lot about the gap, is this is not closed by being willing to tolerate less. It's not closed by you going, okay, I'm willing to tolerate less, or I'm willing to make a change, or I'm willing to raise my standards, right? Because every level of freedom in business and in love asks you to become less available for what drains you. So willingness, right, it's a beautiful word, but action, it is asking you to become less available to what drains you and to what is not aligned. So I want you to actually maybe, and I've just done this before this episode, had a little think about what are you tolerating that is no longer in alignment? What are you tolerating? Let's talk business. Where are you staying small to stay palatable? Where are you staying small? And this, as again, could show up as inconsistency. This could show up as diluting yourself. This could show up as people pleasing. Where are you playing small to stay palatable? Another way that I see a lot of business women fall into this trap is, where are you staying busy instead of being decisive? I have an incredible client that I'm working one-on-one with in a 6-month mentorship, and she is so busy. She is really busy. She is so busy, in fact, that I feel like, from 5 a.m. until 10 p.m., she did not feel like they had any other movement in their day. And that was completely dictated by, mum, husband, 3 kids, family, her clinic practice, showing up online. We're building a program at the moment. But the busyness in her mind was blamed on a lack of funds to do the next thing, the lack of funds to get people support, a lack of time, all these things and I'm not saying these aren't true, because we do need to go, what's true for you? right? But what I am saying is when we stay really busy, it actually stops us from being creative and stops us from being decisive about who we're trying to and what we're trying to be and create. So we use it as a distraction. Because if we just got a little bit of support over here, offloaded an hour over here, raised our prices a little bit here, suddenly we have the freedom of space and spaciousness and time to be decisive about where we want to go. So where are you staying busy instead of decisive? And a lot of the times, this is why I do work deeply with clients one-on-one, is it's hard to see when you're in it. And this beautiful client has been in this cycle for at least 8 years. Imagine that, being in the same cycle for 8 years, wanting something more than what she's created, all this study, all these expertise, but feeling so busy and capped that she hasn't been able to do anything about it nearly ever, right? This is where it comes up for so many women, okay? The other thing that comes up, where are you avoiding the visibility or leadership required to get you to your next level? Are you avoiding it? As I said, staying busy, not hiring an admin assistant for a couple of hours a week? Where are you not just spending half an hour on a Sunday sorting out maybe a couple of things that you could do during your week? Maybe the kids could walk home from school one day a week. Now, I'm not going to put these words in all of your mouths, but when we avoid the visibility or leadership that your next level requires, this is where we get this, oh my God, I'm stuck and I'm a victim to my life. This is something that I work so deeply with my clients. How about in relationships? Where are you avoiding truth to keep the peace? Ouch. Where are you tolerating disconnection instead of asking for what you want? Maybe it's more depth. Where are you abandoning yourself or shrinking so that you stay chosen? Maybe you are tolerating lack of communication. Maybe is hot on the communication for a month and then is not for a couple of weeks. Does that work with you? Is that what you are? What are you tolerating? Now, this goes for individual self. Where are you negotiating with your own comfort zones? Where are you not saying yes to investing in yourself? Where are you negotiating with the type of way that you want to run your business? Where are you negotiating with that freedom business that you desire? Where are you negotiating with your health? Where are you negotiating with getting up in the morning and starting your day on a really positive, strong note? Where are you waiting to feel ready rather than choosing your identity and your next level? Where are you choosing familiarity over alignment? That is a really big one. Where are you choosing what feels safe over what you actually want? And let this one land. If nothing changed for the next 12 months, would that version of your life still feel acceptable? If you were to wake up in 12 months, would the version of your life still feel acceptable? Or would you feel like something could have been done? Like my friend of 8 years. I have another woman who's had a business on the side for 6 years and she's never fully stepped in because of fear. I won't go deep into all those fears that she's been feeling, but that's what we've worked through. This is what we do. Your standards, they're not this massive declaration of boundaries. They're not this like, these are my standards and this is what I'm going to accept. Standards are actually built in the micro moments. They're in your little decisions. Every yes, every no, every delay or every justification, every time you don't keep your word to yourself, every time you accept shitty behavior, right? These little micro moments are what show what your standards are. And how you change them is you change the way that you respond in these micro moments. Because it starts to teach your subconscious who you are. It teaches your subconscious that you are no longer going to settle and say yes for things when they're really a no. You're no longer going to settle for being treated that way. You're no longer going to settle to not keep your word to yourself. And the identity upgrades will actually happen when you choose differently before it feels safe. When it's uncomfortable and then you choose. That is when the identity upgrade actually starts to change. When you stay present instead of self-soothing, and this is what I think I talked last week a lot about the self-care myth as well. When we stay present instead of bypassing a feeling or bypassing the uncomfortable or accepting shitty behavior, and soothing it or distracting yourself, this is where you start to upgrade your identity. Because self-leadership is staying with the discomfort long enough to choose in alignment. So it is actually time to ask yourself what you really, really want. Is it a freedom business? Is it a real, beautiful, deeply connected relationship? Because either or, they both require the same thing. A freedom business requires you to have a strong foundation of self-trust. It requires you to have really strong, clean standards that you've worked through your own BS, right? And this is what happened when I first started this business. I still had an identity of a victim single mum. So I would attract a lot of people that were like that had, no money, that were a victim to their circumstance. Again, hard to see until I got my own mentor. If you want freedom in business, it also requires real honesty with yourself, self-leadership. But the biggest thing that it requires is embodied self-leadership. The reason people come to me is because I embody all my teachings. I teach what I've learned. I teach what I've manifested. I teach what I've crafted over and over and over again. I have my own frameworks that I live by every single day, and I embody them. And this is why my clients get results. There is no cookie cutter here. There is nothing here for you other than embodied leadership. This is how I've done it over and over again. This is what has worked for me. And this is how we apply it and create your own unique roadmap to building your business in your life. If you want depth in relationships, it requires honesty. It requires you to be emotionally available. What do you need to be emotionally available? You need to be working on your wounds, your triggers, your traumas, so that you can take your walls down. It requires the courage to be seen, because both of these things, whether it's business or relationships, will collapse without your identity integrity. Both will thrive when you stop outsourcing your power. And the identity integrity is really, really important. If you don't have a compass as to what you're wanting or what you're working towards, how do you stay in integrity? So this is a huge part of what we need to do, is actually ask ourselves, what do we want? What are we working towards? And who do I need to be? Because the woman who holds a freedom business and the woman who experiences really deep love is the same woman, right? She knows how to lead herself. And another thing I really want to drive home in this work, and I know that I speak it often, is this is not about fixing. Nothing's wrong with you. You're not broken, but this is about upgrading. And to upgrade and not fix, we need to get really radically honest about where you're at without the shame and guilt. You might feel shame and guilt, right? But we need to get honest about where you're at and be in that. If that's your truth, let's start there. Because becoming the woman who can hold more money, more visibility, more intimacy, more responsibility is the woman that has upgraded where she is to where she wants to go, right? And this is the identity space that we live in. This is the identity space we work at the Myself Academy, because I know that and I was actually speaking to someone on Messenger this morning about this. She's like, she's done all the courses. She's got the breathwork course and the business course and all these things, right? But she's got so much going on in her life that she hasn't been able, this has been 3 years, she hasn't been able to actually implement anything. But going through a divorce, very little funds until the divorce goes through. But what's happening is she goes to these classes and learns all this stuff and is incredibly knowledgeable and amazing. But what happens is she goes back to her life and being held by the same friends, the same family problems, the same everything. And what happens to your identity when you keep being reminded? You slump. You go back. There's no way around it. This is why we thrive in community. This is what we do inside the academy. So if you can feel yourself outgrowing the version of you that created your current life, it is not a problem. It is an invitation. Do you want to meet yourself there? Because you actually don't need to try harder. You need to become unavailable for the life that you have been tolerating, for the standards that you have set for yourself. And you need to become available for the one you're meant to lead. That is a huge message. Become unavailable for the life you've been tolerating and available for the one you're meant to lead. I have loved this episode. I hope you have too. And yes, please share it. You know where to find me. If any of this has sparked anything in you, just jump on a call with me. Let's talk about the academy. Let's talk about our one-on-one mentorship. But I know that you are here, and that means I know that you're ready for an upgrade. So reach out. Let this be your invitation. And I cannot wait to see you next week. Ciao.